lesson 23. Lesson 23, we go back to the start of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Chapter 1, Sutra 1. Last week I explained a little bit about the book itself. The meaning of Hatha Yoga Pradipika. That the title in itself indicates the core of yoga, the essence of yoga, which is harmony. The balance between the sun and the moon. Hatha. Hatha, sun, moon, yoga, control. Pradipika, the science of. Many people studying the book, if at all, do not know this. Many people practicing yoga, even teaching yoga, have never heard of the word sattva or nada, which you noticed last week was mentioned in one of the sutras. So yoga has many aspects that are incredibly valuable for us as human beings, that in most yoga classes are lacking, unfortunately. Let's have a look at Sutra 1, Chapter 1. I salute the primeval Lord Shiva, who taught Parvati the Hatha Yoga Vidya, which is as a lofty stairways for those who wish to attain the lofty, which is a stairway for those who wish to attain the lofty Raja Yoga. Every holy book, every ancient books were almost all holy. They always described spiritual aspects of life. Every holy book starts with an invocation. And Svatmarama, no different, is dedicating the book not to his own glory. He's not taking credit for the book on his own title. It's a book that is written based on inspiration. That is why he salutes the primeval Lord Shiva. So, not to confuse this with religion, although interestingly religions started in the same way as this. A study of mankind, a study of human psychology, a study of the environment. But the established religions as we know them are the product of centuries, if not thousands of years, of misunderstanding of scriptures like this, literal interpretation, and therefore misunderstanding, but also abuse by the authorities, whose only goal is to control the population. And you instill fear in the population by threatening doom and gloom given from heaven. So we try to go beyond that, beyond the dogma and the ignorance, and come to the core of what it is about. We live in an age of commercial interest. If I write a book, I do that to earn money or to pump up my ego, or both. People have told me many times to write a book, but I'm not inspired. Maybe one day I will rewrite the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, because there are many things to add to what Ajita already wrote. But the inspiration has to be there. That is the first sentence, greeting Lord Shiva. So you ask for insight, you ask for the light, inspiration. The sutra also says that Lord Shiva was teaching Parvati Hatha Yoga Vidya, the science of Hatha Yoga, which is a stairway for those who wish to attain the lofty Raja Yoga. There is an anecdote that Lord Shiva was teaching Parvati, his wife Parvati, on a beach in what is modern day Sri Lanka. His teachings, which was between God and Goddess, indicating that it is a higher science, was overheard by the fish Matsya. Matsya is a fish swimming in the ocean, came to the surface, overheard the teachings of Lord Shiva to his wife Parvati. Having obtained this higher knowledge, Matsya then became the king of the fish kingdom, Matsyendra. It's a funny story, eh? But if you read between the lines, Matsyendra is responsible for conveying this divine science to humankind, to us. I think I mentioned last week that making things appear to be divine, something from God, something from heaven, that is a symbolical way to indicate, hey, pay attention, here you are looking at something really valuable. Nothing else, no false religions. It's just the ancient people's way of saying this is important. So we call it divine. We call it the science of the gods. The story here is that Matsya overheard that divine knowledge, basically as a spy, taking that with him. And very interesting, we now know with our modern archaeology, our modern science, that life started in the sea. Organic life that now lives on land in the form of human beings, animals and plants, originated in the sea. And it appears that ancient people, without the benefit of our modern technology, sophisticated technology, had an insight in the fact that life originated in the sea. That is what you can read between the lines of this sutra. Matsyendra became the king of mankind, in fact. And you probably know that every culture has its own story in a fairly similar way. The Bible starts with an anecdote like that. Korean history also starts with an anecdote like that, with Dangun. The sutra also indicates that the science of yoga, Hatha Yoga Vidya, is a means for humankind to elevate themselves. It's a means for humankind to civilize, to evolve, to develop. It is a stairway for those who wish to attain the lofty Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is widening, awakening and further widening consciousness, and located in Sahasrara Chakra, the crown chakra, where, as you know, all the human beings' higher characteristics are located. Gesundheit. Sutra 2. Swatmarama Yogin, having saluted his Lord and Guru, teaches the Hatha Vidya solely for the attainment of Raja Yoga. As an extension of Sutra 1, again referring to the divinity of this science, but also a link made between Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. Hatha Yoga is part of Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga does not exist without Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga does not exist without Raja Yoga. It's all one. Very often I see people talking about yoga and meditation as being two different kinds of disciplines. Yoga studios say, if they offer meditation at all, they will say yoga and meditation. Technically, that is not correct, because if you say yoga, you say meditation. It's one and the same. And that also applies to energy control, pranayama. Energy control already starts when you contemplate the yamas and the niyamas, which give you insight in your own behavior that then automatically you want to control, to diminish your conflicts, your suffering. So their control already starts at the very basis of yoga. And the word yoga means control. Also a fact that many yoga teachers do not know. About the issue of creating a book, or anything else for that matter, art, music, art in any form. In the past, commercial pursuit did not exist, not in the way that we know it in our modern society. In the past, music, but also holy books were created because people wanted to express their inspiration. Not to make money or to pump up their ego. They wanted to manifest inspiration. Not only that, they wanted other people to lift their spirits with that. Classical music, classical art, paintings and what have you. Also classical books. We now live in a time that a large part of what is created in terms of books and art is not based on inspiration anymore. A lot of the pop culture is based on sheer profitability. There's no inspiration, there's only clever marketing. How can I make as much money as possible? There is a big difference there. People sometimes ask me, Ron, I'm interested in your course, but it will take 2 months before it starts. So please tell me what kind of books can I read in preparation? And I always say, don't. Because reading books about yoga will only add to the confusion. Most books are not written based on inspiration, and if they are written like this, and you need somebody to interpret that for you. I have tried to read books that people told me are good books when it comes to yoga. The only one that I really liked was the autobiography of a yogi. That was written by a real yogi. He changed his name, but his original name was Yogeshwaranand Saraswati, I think, and then later it changed into Yogesvaranand Paramahansa. The other books that I read, try to read, I start reading, and after 2 or 3 pages, I scratch my head and I say, what did I read? And I go back to the first page, and I try to read it again. And again, after a couple of pages, I think, I don't know what this is about, what it is trying to tell me. And the book ends up on the shelf, gathering dust. Yeah, I see that some of you recognize that. If a book is written with inspiration, it touches your heart and you find it difficult to put it away. If the book gives you a headache, confusion, and you have no idea what it is trying to tell you, it's not written with pure intention. Often just to make money for commercial purpose. And don't get me wrong, commercial purpose is not wrong. We live in an age that if you do things for free, you can't survive because you simply can't pay the bills. That's another story. It's about intention behind it. It's perfectly all right to write a wonderful book or create a wonderful piece of art and earn money from it. And according to yoga philosophy, earning money from things created with a pure heart is a natural consequence. You don't even have to do effort. It will come naturally. While if you create with the purpose to make money, no inspiration involved, you simply have to work very hard and exhaust yourself to make some money. Anyway, Sutra 3, 4, 5 to 9. Something very interesting happens here, but we'll pick it apart. To those who wander in the darkness of conflicting doctrines, being ignorant of Raja Yoga, the most compassionate Svatmarama Yogin offers the light of Hatha Vidya. Those who wander in the darkness of conflicting doctrines, read your social media. What do you call it? Read your social media and see how much confusion there is among the people. There's so many fake stories that people believe to be true. There are so many conspiracy theories. There are so many different kinds of yoga, if we stick to yoga. How many yogas are there? Hundreds, maybe, or not. Because in the end there is only one. And of course Svatmarama, not being from a time of social media and conspiracy theories, is of course talking about people looking for answers, people looking for growth, development, light, knowledge. And you still see that in spiritual circles. There are many spiritual circles that is based on visual aspects, based on dogma, manipulation. Just last week there was a story of somebody who was forced to eat poop in a church. And the leaders of the church justified that by saying it is part of a ritual. That is creepy. That is people wandering in the darkness of conflicting doctrines. And the person who ate the poop is not to blame. That person is looking for answers, is looking for guidance, for wisdom. It's the people that are supposed to give it what they are looking for that are to blame. So while Svatmarama, the author of the book, is mentioning this, you find in yoga also the majority of the people who are engaged in any form of yoga practice they are still in the dark about what yoga really is about. It is because of this that I am so passionate about sticking to what it really is about. I cannot do flying yoga or acro yoga or vinyasa, what have you. If you like it, enjoy it. But if you come to me, then you get the real deal. The essence of yoga. Trying to help you come out of the dark. Yoga in the end is about enlightenment and liberation. Insight, wisdom, knowledge leads to liberation. Liberation of the spirit. Liberation from identifications, from everything that you were taught since you were born. Fourth sutra, Machendra, Goraksha, and others knew well the Hatha Vidya. The yogins Svatmarama learned it by their favor. Svatmarama is doing something very interesting here. He confirms that his source is related to the origin of yoga. Machendra, which is the fish, Matsya, that overheard the teachings on the beach and became king. Machendra Goraksha stand at the basis of yoga. He is establishing his lineage here. Svatmarama says, if you doubt my teachings, my book, here is where I'm from. My source is genuine, original. Sometimes people will ask you, people who know something about yoga, they will ask you, what is your lineage? What is your lineage? When people ask, Patanjali is your lineage. Our teachings are based on Patanjali and of course also Svatmarama. But Patanjali is the father of yoga. At the end of this course we will study a little part of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. In the advanced course, the entire book will be studied. Very interesting. The Hatha Yoga, by the way, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, is a book that was written about 1,000 years after Patanjali Sutras. We will come to that lesson 30, 31, when we study. The final part of this course is about the science of misery, based on Patanjali. Very interesting in a practical sense. And then we will explain a little bit more about the relationship between the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and the difference between the two. There's a clear difference between the two. So having established his lineage, don't forget your lineage is Patanjali, not Ron Katwijk. I'm just kidding. Okay, 5 to 9. Shiva, Machendra, Sabara, Ananda Bhairava, Kaurangi, Meena, Goraksha, Virupaksha, Bilashaya, Mantana, Bhairava, Siddhi, Buddha, Kantadi, Korantaga, Surananda, Siddhapada, Karpati, Kaneri, Pujapada, Nityanata, Niranjana, Kapalin, Bindunata, Kakakandishvara, Alama, Prabhudeva, Kodakolin, Tintini, Banukin, Naradeva, Kanda, Kapalika, and many other great Siddhas have conquered time by the power of Hatha Yoga, having conquered time by the power of Hatha Yoga, move about the universe. You're almost going to think about Star Wars or something. Moving about the universe and conquering time. This is a continuation of the lineage, starting from Machendra. You see that Buddha is mentioned there also. What does it mean when you conquer time? You become a universal being. Strange? No, you are a product of your time. That is why you see a difference between each generation. And each older generation always says, when I was young, everything was better. And the younger generation never agrees with that. But they will say it 30 years later. They will say the same. When I was young, everything was better. We are a product of our time. You are limited to what you have been exposed to since you were born. And the development of a human being simply shows that your younger years, you are more deeply impressed by your environment. And when you're older, the environment doesn't impress you anymore, and all you can do is look back to the time when you were impressed. Simply memory evolves like that. People who are born in the past 20 years, they have a very natural way of handling computer-related things, most of you, in total contrast with me, because when it comes to computers, I'm from the Stone Age. Because when I was born and growing up, computers did not exist. My mom is from a time that they learned some English in school. She's like many Korean people, older generation. She understands when you speak English, but she refuses to speak it. Ashamed. Shy, but also ashamed. Very uncomfortable. But when I was born, already there were, most of the programs on Dutch TV at that time when I was a child were either English or American, with subtitle. So before I learned English in school, I could have a conversation in English. Of course, not perfect, but without ever having learned English, I had absorbed that from being exposed to it. Now I try to learn Korean. I spent years studying Korean, and it still sucks. My memory, my brain just doesn't work in the same way as it did when I was a child being exposed to English, unfortunately. Conquering time means that you rise above your conditioning. That means, or that allows you to understand the past and the future. Many of my observations that I'm trying to convey to you are based on that. Understanding how people functioned not only 100 years ago, but also 1,000, 5,000 or 10,000 years ago. That is very difficult to understand if you're still a prisoner of your conditioning, which most people are, simply because their consciousness has not awakened. Yoga is the science to awaken, and you see here, the people that are mentioned here have reached the highest level of yoga, the highest level of awakening consciousness, and they have conquered time. They're not prisoner anymore of how they have been raised since they were born. That's what conquering time means in a practical way. I hope I explained it in a practical way. Moving about the universe is related to the idea that energy is eternal. Energy is eternal and indivisible, unbreakable. What are you? You are a ball of energy. That physical body, that is only a wrap. That is only the package in which your ball of energy is wrapped. And that package will, within a certain limited amount of time, it will pass on, it will pass away. You die. But your energy, being eternal and indivisible, not only ancient yogis came to that conclusion, also modern scientists. Einstein, many of his theories are based on the premise that energy is endless, eternal, indivisible. Your spirit is a ball of energy. Yogis moving about the universe, those are your guides. Eastern philosophy, yoga, Buddhism, is based on the premise that you are reincarnating. And every time you reincarnate, you continue your evolution based on what you have achieved in previous lives. Buddhism and yoga, therefore, Hinduism, look at life as being very tragic. Because we spend a whole lifetime barely evolving. Because our consciousness is dark. We don't grow, we don't learn, we don't evolve. And thus, it is estimated we have to live through at least 1 million reincarnations before we reach the highest level of evolution. Can you follow me? Yoga is designed to help you shorten that process. As a result of yoga practice, your consciousness opens, you develop insights you never had before and other people never have. And based on that, you constantly evolve, constantly grow and develop. So next life, when you are born, you will continue that process on a much higher level than you would have if you had not opened your consciousness. In the end, when you reach the highest level, you don't need to reincarnate anymore, and your spirit moves about the universe. This phrase, moving about the universe, indicates these people mentioned in Sutra 5 to 9 have reached the highest level. They don't reincarnate anymore, but they are there for you, to guide you. That's why I often talk about the universe. The universe has a plan for you, for me. But most people are disconnected. We are too busy with material aspects of life. We are too busy with our fears and our desires, our lower emotions. So we always try to go upstream. The universe has a plan for us. If we can connect with that, things start going smooth in life, develop in a natural way. This is about being able to listen to the heart. Listening to the heart is in fact being connected with the universe. When there is lots of friction, you do not try to push through with violence. You try to figure out why there is so much friction, why there is failure and conflict. And you realize that what you are trying to achieve is not for you, it's not meant to be. Not easy. It has taken me many, many years to figure that out. But when you figure that out, you find that if you're patient and you just keep yourself busy with practical aspects of life, with a good attitude, the universe will present you at the right time, the right situation, the right people, if involved, and it goes very naturally. The people moving about the universe is the consciousness that is up there, that if only you open up, if only you surrender. Remember the last niyama, surrender to the highest, surrender to God, whatever you want to call it. If only you surrender. Take a deep breath, just relax, open up. And insight will be provided at the right time, when you need it. According to yoga philosophy, that insight comes from those spirits that have reached the highest level and move about the universe, as the sutra is telling us. It's a very complicated story, I realize, I know, but this course and in the advanced course, if ever you have a chance to take it, if I start it again, I will, but don't know yet, don't know when yet, but the concept will become clear more and more, because it is what yoga is about, and it will be repeated, looking at it from various different angles. The last sutra for before lunch, Sutra 10. The Hatha Yoga is a sheltering monastery for those scorched by all the three types of pain, tapa. Those engaged in the practice of every kind of yoga, Hatha Yoga is like the tortoise that supports the world. First about Hatha Yoga being the tortoise that supports the world. Yoga is designed to take control of your energy household, because your energy naturally, not only your energy but the energy in the universe, has a tendency to condense and eventually manifest into matter. But for a human being, that also means that energy condensing to the bottom leads to lower emotions and desires. I mentioned a couple of times since the start of this course that many yoga practitioners who consider themselves to be advanced they do not engage in asana practice anymore. They think they have achieved their goal, they can keep themselves busy with reading books and maybe meditation, but not necessary to practice anymore. So my experience is that it's not correct. When I stop, I just feel different. And the suffering starts again. And as soon as I start practicing again, it just feels totally different. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika, also in light of this sentence, lays down the foundation for everything else that you do in yoga. So in that sense, it can also be considered the tortoise that supports the world. Then Hatha Yoga also, many yoga studios offer various kinds of yoga, and one of those kinds of yoga is Hatha Yoga. So it is believed that Hatha Yoga is indeed traditional practice of asana by standing still. But that is not Hatha Yoga. Because Hatha Yoga contains all the 8 limbs of Raja Yoga. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, and then the 3 elements that constitute meditation, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, which are all described in this book, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And only a small section of chapter 1 is about asana. All the rest of the book, chapter 2 is about pranayama, as you know, including kriya as a bridge. Chapter 3 is about mudra. And chapter 4 is about samadhi. So very different from the idea that people have about Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is also the complete science of yoga, but focusing on the practical aspect. Raja Yoga and also the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is much more philosophical. After laying the foundation with all the practical aspects of yoga, all the way up to the practice of samadhi, by the way, you then keep yourself busy with the study, the philosophy. A very deep study basically in the functioning of humankind. That is what the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali basically is about. The Hatha Yoga is a sheltering monastery for those scorched by all 3 types of pain. Hatha Yoga is a sheltering monastery. Oriental philosophy, but not only Oriental philosophy, philosophy around the world is based on the premise, the idea that we are suffering. Human beings inherently suffer because life is suffering. That is the pain that is mentioned here. But when we talk about pain, we think about physical pain. When you cut your finger when you're cooking, or burn, or bump your head into the doorpost, or physical pain. Mental pain when we have a conflict. But there are many more kinds of pain that we do not recognize as such. Very subtle pains. It is the reason why mankind is suffering. It's also the reason why we get very sick. Because every pain, every disease, every big suffering starts with a very tiny little subtle piece of suffering that is in fact a warning, telling you to, hey, pay attention, something is going wrong here. Because we do not recognize it, it continues to escalate. The pain gets bigger and bigger. The longer we ignore the signals, out of ignorance, we don't do that on purpose, out of ignorance we just don't recognize it as a warning, eventually escalation goes to the point that it becomes physical. When you reach the point of physical disease, there has been a long line of subtle warnings, signals that told you to pay attention and change course. Because we don't see that, we end up getting sick. And even that we misunderstand. We just go to the doctor, get a pill, and move on, making the same mistake again and again. Mental suffering, stress, also leads to physical disease. The number one killer of people is heart disease, which starts with mental stress. Most of the cancers also are caused by our psychological condition. The tension leads to a blockage in your energy circulation, leading to a buildup of cell production, which eventually becomes uncontrolled cell production, and then it becomes a tumor. When you practice yoga correctly, you become more sensitive and conscious. You start more and more becoming aware of these subtle kinds of pain that other people fail to see. It is of course important that you consciously start paying attention to that. When you feel resistance in a situation, you have to investigate. Why do I feel resistance when every time when I meet this person, I feel resistance? Every time when I work on my project, I don't feel happy. I feel stress. I don't feel good about this. But so why? You have to investigate. The thing is that if you don't investigate, you continue escalating. Eventually, it leads to physical disease. But remember this always, and try to understand next time when you are confronted with disease. Try to figure out what caused it. You may need medicine, that's fine, but that's not the end of the story. For most people it is, because we don't understand the connection between the disease and the way that we function. But if you can do that, if you can eventually develop the insight, it makes a huge difference in your life. Not only will you become sick less, you'll be a lot happier. Because lack of happiness is caused by not understanding our functioning. And when you more and more understand it, then you will avoid more and more those kind of things in life that do affect your well-being, your happiness. It's a long-term process, but it has to start here. And you will make the same mistake again tomorrow, but tomorrow you will say, oh, wait a minute. Why is this happening? Why am I feeling like this? And from there you will become more and more skillful at deducting where your issue started, where the conflict started, where the disease started. So pain is not just physical pain when you are hurt, when you are wounded, or mental pain when you have a conflict, or based on failure caused by failure. There are many, much more than the gross type of pain. There are much more subtle types of pain that we simply do not recognize. But it will be of enormous value if we start recognizing it. It will change your life and those of the people around you. Questions? Yes?
For the part that
Neda?
it says about the beings or spirits that move around the universe.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how after like they are the spirits who have reached a higher realization and don't need to reincarnate anymore.
Yeah.
So does that mean that they can choose to stay there or come back? Or are they
You are looking at the human being from the ego perspective, but in the universe there is no ego. You have no choice. You go there and you stay there. And be happy that you have reached it. Why would you want to come back?
Then
you come back in the spirit. Those people that open up, like you and me, are in the process of doing, can receive guidance from those that are up there. Why would you want to come back?
Are they like all one or like when they go up there?
That is for you to contemplate on, and
okay.
Because you're talking here about spirit. You're talking about subtle matter, which is not concrete. It's based on feeling. So what I convey is my observations and my conclusions. Your conclusions may be different.
Okay.
The essence may be the same, but the way that you feel it is different, because every individual will feel it differently. With the same essence, but this is based on how you are conditioned, and that conditioning being different from every other person in this room, including me.
Okay. Thank you.
In the end, it's the universe, of which we are all part.
Yes.
You know, many yogis, yoga practitioners, they say namaste. Worse, they say, the light in you greets the light in me, or the light in me greets the light in you, or the spirit in me greets the spirit in you. It's okay if you say that if you understand what you're talking about. But most people don't. It's just, Ajita would call it spiritual diarrhea. That's why I never say namaste, never. We talk about spirit and we talk about light, but we don't engage in that kind of nonsense. We just keep perpetuating our ignorance and our ego. Even in yoga, the science that is designed to overcome that. Can you see Sutra 3 about wandering in the darkness of conflicting doctrines? That is basically the whole world, except a small portion, including the yoga world, except a small portion. We're all wandering in the darkness of conflicting doctrines, I am too, and I was much more so. But more and more escaping from it. And yoga is the tool. Very powerful tool. Okay, let's have a short break then. If you feel a bit overwhelmed, don't worry. Philosophy is like having a big meal. You need time to digest it. And while you keep yourself busy or are on your way in the subway or bus or taxi, things start falling into place in the days that follow. So just surrender, let it go.